Today on the TV Time Machine, we welcome Tim Ferriss of Fear Less with Tim Ferriss. Mr. Ferriss is a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and renowned investor, having been named one of Fortune's 40 Under 40 and is the host of the top-rated podcast, The Tim Ferriss Show. Over the next segment, Tim Ferriss will talk about his new talk show, Fearless with Tim Ferriss, featuring prominent guests who've overcome their fears to craft unique paths to success, which airs on the AT&T Audience Network. Again, for those of you intrepid enough to ride the Ferris wheel of fortune, feel free to be the fairest of the fair as we divest ourselves of the past in order to fear less in the present. Tim, thank you for coming on board the TV Time Machine.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, Tim, tell us what Fearless with Tim Ferriss is all about.
Fearless with the less in parentheses is really a show intended to teach people how to fear less, which is a coachable, trainable skill, not to be fearless, which is not the goal at all. And I've wanted to do this for quite a few years. And specifically, we're inviting these icons and world-class performers like David Blaine, the illusionist and endurance artist, or comedian Bill Burr, who's the comedian's comedian, founder of ESPN, et cetera, to come on stage and talk about not the highlight reel, but to talk about the dark times, the really tough decisions, the insecurities, the moments of self-doubt, and how they got through those, how they were coached through those, how they fought their way through it or trained their way to become more comfortable with discomfort, that type of thing. So it's intended to be a really specific, tactical and practical guide to helping people to overcome their own fears, whether that's asking for a raise, asking someone out, ending a relationship, starting a company. It could be anything. But that's the objective.
Right. On your podcast, you really dig deep with your interviews and the subjects that you tackle, but few TV talk shows these days truly go in depth when it comes to conversations with their guests. Is that a gap that you'd like to fill with Fearless with Tim Ferriss?
It is a gap that I'd like to fill, and I think we've done it. So in the case of, say, the podcast, my conversations are very routinely an hour and a half to 3 hours. For every guest for Fearless, we did, I would say, 2.5 to 3 hours of recording with studio audience, showing videos, showing childhood pictures. I mean, it was really, really fun to do. And then we were able to create basically the highlights of, say, 50 minutes to 60 minutes, and that's what's going to ultimately be aired on the AT&T Audience Network. And I think we get really deep. I think we go very, very deep, and you hear a lot of stories that no one has heard before.
Right. You're talking with very accomplished people on your program. So what characteristics do successful people tend to share in common?
Well, I think as it relates to what we talked about, say, in these particular interviews, they share in common a few things. Number one is they tend to believe some variation of the expression that your success can be measured by the number of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have. So they realize that really the name of the game is expanding your sphere of comfort, and you only do that by exposing yourself to discomfort. And whether that is getting back on stage after you bomb as a musician or a comedian, or making a second attempt at a world record for breath holding after failing very publicly on live television, in the case of David Blaine, for instance. These are people who started off much like anyone else. I mean, they have the same flaws that everyone else has, the same insecurities, and have developed over time using the right books, using the right practices, the ability to tackle harder and harder things. So I'd say that those are a few of the commonalities that come to mind right off the bat. And the good news is these are all things that people can imitate and test themselves. Not the breath holding, but the books, for instance, by, say, Primo Levi or by different types of Stoic philosophers. These came up over and over and over again, which was very interesting to me.
Now, your show is titled Fearless with Tim Ferriss. Why do human beings have such a problem with fear?
Well, I think we have a problem with fear in many cases because fear is simultaneously extremely helpful and necessary to protect us, but it is very misapplied in a modern world in the sense that many of us, I think, tend to live in a low-grade fight-or-flight biological sense for much of our waking hours, and that is extremely counterproductive. So fear itself is not the problem. It's unexamined fear, I think, that is very often the problem. So what many of these guests do is they will journal, and they have very specific approaches to journaling in the morning or at night, where they can trap their thoughts on paper and really get a better understanding of what a fear represents and ask why several times and dig into the worst-case scenarios so that they realize most of the things they're afraid of have very little power to hurt them in any kind of permanent way. And that is extremely empowering. So I would say that power is a huge or rather, fear can be a huge gift in the right circumstances, but it's applied to too many things.
And where can people find out more about yourself and Fearless with Tim Ferriss online, Tim?
People can find everything they might want. They can see some really fun trailers and teasers. They can see all the guests and learn more about me at tim.blog/fearless. So if they just go on the web to tim.blog/fearless, you'll find everything. And then the show is on AT&T Audience Network, which they can find on DirecTV and also on the DirecTV Now app. So they can check it out live streaming on directtv.com. At that time. But they can find everything at tim.blog/fearless.
Great. Tim, it's been a tremendous pleasure having you aboard the TV Time Machine. Feel free to join us again in the future or in the past.
Thank you very much.
If you've enjoyed your journey on the TV Time Machine, please like and subscribe. We look forward to having you again on the TV Time Machine.